Oki, Itamexistiko, good day. It is the near afternoon of Sunday, November 25th, 2018, more than halfway through the second winter lunar cycle, Itkanako Kotoiniit. That's when the rivers freeze over. Although I don't think they're actually going to freeze over in this winter cycle this year. I was down there for my usual Sunday morning walk and talk today, earlier, and the rivers, they do have a good shelf of ice on both shores, off of both shores, but in the river in the middle it's all free flowing. However, in that middle there is icebergs, it's constantly icebergs, and big piles of kind of slushy ice moving through. When the geese are making their way along, they have to navigate between, kind of like Frogger Frogger on the river, and push their way through the floating ice. However, this week we're going into another warm period, it looks like, and today is bright and sunny, and that's what this video is about. I can't be inside. Not when it's this beautiful out there. Even though I should be in here, I should be at home today, taking advantage of the opportunity to do some major domestic cleaning. Mahoney's away. I don't have any distractions. Sheen's at work. There's just me and the animals here. And there's a lot of catching up with the house cleaning that needs to be done. I mean, we've got basically a zoo here of of animals residing in this house, including ourselves. So there's lots to do, but look at the sunlight. How can we do those things when there's that kind of sunlight out there? No, I gotta get outside some more. So even coming home from the pond, from the walk and talk this morning, I took off my jacket just briefly, used the washroom and stuff, and I did a couple of things. Maybe had a little bite to eat out of the fridge, not a real meal or anything, but and then I had to get my jacket on again because I knew I got to get back outside. So what I've figured I'm gonna do is go for a bit of a walk, and we have this thing in Lethbridge, Alberta, and I know that this exists in a lot of places, but here we have the little library system, right? So there's a bunch of, and increasingly more, little neighborhood boxes where people can go and drop off books that they've read, and they can pick up books that neighbors have left that they've read. So it's kind of a little library, right? You take a book, you leave a book, kind of a thing. I have a few books here, two that I borrowed from the little library that I need to return, and one that I'm contributing back to the little library system. And so I'm gonna go visit 3 of our neighborhood boxes to do that. Maybe I'll find something I want to read amongst those boxes, maybe not. As I've expressed before, I'm not that much of a reader, but still there's something about about books. Sometimes even just having a book around, you look at my space here. I got books, right? And I got actually boxes of other books downstairs that are more kind of anthropological heavy books that I'm not so into anymore. This is mostly nature books. You got a whole library here of the life histories of North American birds. So I've got books, but I really don't spend much time with my nose in them. All the same, I am a little bit engaged, and I do have a couple of books that I've read, as I said, and I need to bring them back, and I figure that's a good excuse to get me outside for a couple of hours to trek between those different boxes. So let's go check it out. So I'm just walking behind Mike Mountain Horse Elementary School here on the west side of Lethbridge, and I'm very near to the box where I want to deposit my first book. In fact, it's just across the street from Mike Mountain Horse, from the front of the building, the front entrance. That's Jerry Potts Boulevard. And as I was walking in this direction, you know, to hit this box first, I was thinking to myself, I got 3 titles, I got 3 boxes. Which book is going to be most appreciated in which neighborhood? And I got to tell you, I started going down a road of gentrification, if that's the right word, where I was thinking, well, the folks that live along Jerry Potts Boulevard are not quite the yuppies of Ridgewood and Heritage, where I'm going to visit the next 2 boxes. So maybe they would appreciate, you know, this title more, because these books are more kind of the yuppie flavor. But I really had to check myself, because I was not too long ago a resident of Jerry Potts Boulevard, you know, in the not too distant past, from would have been maybe year 2000 to 2005 or 6, I bet, something like that. I lived on a duplex, you know, it was exciting. I got to manhandle criminals coming in right through my windows, for real. And but it was fun. Those were good times. This is that neighborhood. It's still not very far from where I live. Like, I'm just less than a kilometer walk, but it's a different flavor over here. And I was going to respond to that by giving them a book that I thought they would like. But now I'm going to give them a book that I think they won't like. Because I don't want to be biased. For real, this is what we're turning into, people. So what I'm going to give them is Buried by Ken Wylie. Now, this book was something that I made a video about it probably more than a year ago, I think. This was a book that I took out of the little library in my own neighborhood in Heritage. And I read most of this book. Not all of it, but I read enough of it that I feel like I can say, I read that book. And I picked it out because I am a big fan. Well, I wouldn't say a big fan, but I enjoy survival lessons, survival stories. This is a genre that actually exists in Blackfoot stories too. And we can talk about that someday, but not today. Today I'm just doing books. But yeah, the survival story, because there's a takeaway from that, hey? And this is what's important, you know. I guess I am going to talk about it. This is the important part in the Blackfoot tradition too. And it's in the way that it's instilled that value of taking away something valuable from somebody's survival story. The way that is reinforced is in ceremony, and even like, say I go visit somebody that has a thunder pipe, and I have dinner with them at their house, and then there's a lot of leftovers and stuff, so they pack me some leftovers, and I'm going to leave the house with those leftovers. When I'm going to do that, they're going to tell me, well, okay, you can take the food, take those leftovers, but you got to tell 4 stories. And those stories will be of 2 of one type and 2 of another. 2 of them are going to be stories about kamotapi, escaping from danger, survival stories. And 2 of them are going to be stories about like stawapi, growth stories, like stories of good fortune, but also like not necessarily just financial good fortune, although that's in there, but personal growth too. At one time this was kind of a merged concept, right? That you can take these big leaps in your development and they're connected with in your personal development, and they're connected also with your subsistence success, right? So these 4 stories are told because you're going to take food out, and so what you're given in turn, in exchange, you're giving food for the mind and the soul, right? Things to grow by, in terms of knowledge, and survival stories was an important part. So that's why I picked out this book, Buried, because I thought, well, this is a survival story. This guy was a guide who brought a bunch of people backcountry, cross-country skiing. I guess you call it backcountry skiing, I don't know. But any case, there was an avalanche. A bunch of people died. Well, some people died, I should say. And he holds himself to blame. And this is his book about the experience and what he learned from it. And it's really, I don't know, like I didn't read the whole book. I feel like I've read the book. But it could be at the end he turns the table on things. But for the portion of the book that I read, which is probably 2/3 of the book, it's self-reflection, somewhat a brutal chastisement too, It's like he's judging himself harshly, but he's he's exploring other aspects of his life where he sees a connection between the problem that he had, like when he looks at what caused the not what caused the avalanche, but what caused people to get killed in the avalanche. He partially blames himself, and it's for specific shortcomings in his character. And I'm not going to reveal that because that's the giveaway, right? But I'll tell you, he has a lot of self-blame, and the rest of the book is an exploration of that self-blame, looking at other episodes with similitude in one respect or another, psychologically and such, to where he was when this event occurred. And it's kind of going back, and it's a self-correction. And the analogy he gives is this thing where you have a jar of marbles, right? And each of these marbles, this will be the thing that I do give away, and it's kind of important, but gotta prove I read the book. Each of these marbles is an experience, an important experience in life. And say when you're having that experience, it's like taking the marble out of the jar, and at that moment you have an opportunity to study that experience that you're having and put it into another jar to keep, because you've studied it and you've learned from it, right? It doesn't have to be like instantaneous or anything. That's part of, I think, the lesson in this book, is that he's going back to places where he had an experience and he actually just took the marble out of the jar and dropped it and walked on and got to another point and took a marble out of the jar and dropped it, and all these experiences he was having, but not taking the lessons away from them, right? And we all do this, which is the key to making this book something that we can relate to. We all do this stuff, but its relatability is also the kind of the shortcoming of this book, in my opinion. It's why I didn't finish it. It's because it's so relatable that it, you know, he becomes, you recognize that he's being harsh on himself in this exploration of his life. And I didn't like that harshness. Some people might, you know, some people might, that might be all right by them. I'm turning around so that you guys won't see my shadow as I shift the camera gaze. So yeah, I didn't like it. It was too harsh, you know. It doesn't lead anywhere good to spend that much time looking back at what's past and being self-critical. I understand the value of taking lessons from those experiences. You know, I think a better way to approach it would be just to turn them into stories. Turn them into stories you can tell, where people are going to take the lesson from it without, you know, you necessarily having to hear, you know, suffer through hearing you being brutally pounding yourself again and again with this judgment, you know. So Ken Wylie, I hope you're in a better place right now psychologically than you were necessarily when you wrote this book, or what, I don't know. Maybe that's what comes at the end of the book. And I think, would I recommend it to readers? I wouldn't recommend it to anybody going into it like myself necessarily, or okay, I can't say I wouldn't recommend it, but I'd say, you know, you don't have to finish the book, right? Like I didn't have to. You can catch the important thing in what you learn from the first maybe 3 or 4 chapters, and then have that be your takeaway. Because there are some important lessons. Obviously there's important lessons in here. This guy's life lessons, but they're harsh. And I won't say more because it's connected to upbringing and all kinds of stuff. So, but yeah, I guess I would recommend it in a partial read at least. Not quite up to where I got to. I think you could quit earlier than me. And then, you know, there are other people who might really relate better to that. You know, maybe they need that kind of harsh judgment to move something in them at the moment. So for those people, maybe this is going to be a great book. For myself, you know, I took the lesson that I just talked about, and I'm going to give this book back, and we'll see if there's anything in that box that I'd be interested in. So if you live in Lethbridge and you're interested in where are these little library things, here we are at the Gas Plus first stop / U-Haul rental place. On the other side of Jerry Potts here is Mike Mountain Horse Elementary School. Mike Mountain Horse was a prominent historical figure from Guyana Blood Tribe into World War I, among other things. And up here ahead is going to be our box. We're going to pass these apartment complexes. For some reason in my mind, the box was going to be right here, so I wasn't thinking, all right, Still a little bit further yet. But I'm gonna act normal so you don't know. So there's these apartment complexes, and all of this is kind of in the middle of a bunch of different green strips that support trail running in Lethbridge and a little bit of nature, you know, not too much nature. The illusion of nature. They're renting here if you want to move to Lethbridge and take part in the little library system. And up here is our box. So you got a playground over here, big green strip, baseball fields over there. My shadow. Goddamn shadow. I shouldn't talk like that. Shadow is important, but here we have Little Lethbridge Library. Take a book, leave a book. Really closed in, nice and tight, so that the can survive all the crazy weather conditions. And what do we got in here? We got, it looks like a woman has been gotta move the microphone. Looks like a woman has been stalking this. Oh, now that's a classic. That's a good one. Bill Cosby, Time Flies. What's he talking about in this one? He's talking about getting older. Boy, this is hard to resist, folks. Given the recent stuff that's happening with Bill Cosby. Oh, it looks like it's shadow written though by Alvin Poussaint, MD. Oh no, he's just the one that wrote the introduction. Okay, I eat my words there. But yeah, it happens to the best of us, and Bill Cosby is the best there is, delivering his hilariously accurate observations in the inimitable, vintage, prime time style that has won millions of hearts and propelled him to the top of bestsellers lists. Time Flies is light-hearted, richly detailed, highly personal, yet at the same time universally appealing. It's a book for all time and for all ages. I bet it is. I'm gonna leave that because somebody watching this video might really get a kick out of that and want to just consume that, and I'm just gonna leave that. But it's very tempting. I'm gonna put my buried right next to that. Let's bury that guy over here. And we got some other things here. What's this? The Ill Wind Contract. It's got this guy with a knife and his kimono open. Naked girl. Tiger. Yeah. Woman porn. Female porn, you guys. In this box. If you're into that stuff. Ooh, okay. Now we've got nerd stuff that's been read enough that it's breaking into pieces. Some kind of sci-fi story. Not interested, but it's there if you are. Nancy Drew. What Remains of Me. Find out where this is like some kind of the shot is a James Bond ripoff, obviously, but I don't know. Not interested, so I'm not gonna read that. A couple of historical novels, perhaps. Yeah. All right. Leaving that there. Have fun with Buried. Jerry Potts Neighborhood. I'm out to the next drop. Just walking on Red Crow Boulevard right now and reminding myself that even though my buddy, who's the descendant of Jerry Potts and carries his name, might get a kick out of me calling this the Jerry Potts Neighborhood. This is not the Jerry Potts Neighborhood. This is what we call Indian Battle Heights, this area. It's not as bad as I make it out to be for most of it, although there are parts of it that people, you know, yuppie people might describe as sketchy. But my good friend John Nightingale lives in this neighborhood, and my buddy Jeremy Russell, and there's my friend Nigel Crow, and there's a bunch of guys that live in this neighborhood that it's not bad. Indian Battle Heights is not a bad place to be. I don't want to make it out that way. It was certainly a big part in my development, my early placement in the whole Lethbridge schema thing. So, any case, we're gonna be crossing University Drive and heading east into the Ridgewood neighborhood for the next box. All right, we have arrived into the Ridgewood subdivision. For those of you who are looking around and thinking, this kind of looks about the same amount of yuppie as that Indian Battle Heights, you'd pretty much be correct. However, I have this to say. Maclean's Magazine 2018, I believe it was Maclean's Magazine this year, listed Lethbridge, Alberta as the 3rd most dangerous city for violent crime in Canada. Now, I'm pretty afraid. Do I think Maclean's Magazine was correct? No, I don't. However, I will accept that I live in the city with that title this year because it's badass. To be the most dangerous, 3rd most dangerous city. We got the bronze. We got the bronze for the whole nation of Canada. It's pretty good, gotta admit. So, out of the 2 remaining books, which one do I deposit here in Ridgewood? It's a tough call, because I don't feel like I had really a preference, and yet I chose a book. So somewhere in the unlocked mysteries of my mind, there must be a rationale for why. I think because the other book is more personal to me, a little bit more personal. No, a lot more personal. The other book, my last book, my 3rd and final book, is more personal, but also the one that I haven't recently read. And I'm gonna put that one in my neighborhood. I think is kind of gratitude for having taken something from my neighborhood and having read that and had an opportunity to say something about it, which was buried, right? So, Ridgewood. I'm still going to give him something good. I'm going to give him Stephen King's Dr. Sleep. It's got a little corner taken out of the top of the binding here. That was done by a magpie. Many of the pages are dog-eared because that's how I like to mark my place. You know, as much as book lovers are gonna hate that. But it's just a paperback. Relax. Dr. Sleep. I'm not a huge fan of Stephen King. I mean, definitely one of the most prolific, and he's going to go down as one of the most influential writers of our era, for sure. And how many of his books have I read? I don't even know the number, but if you had to say, compared to other authors, I've read a fair amount of Stephen King, you know. Recently, I haven't read so much of him. I think it's just he doesn't scare me like he used to. Things aren't, you know, that used to feel scary aren't anymore. To a lot of us, I think, as a result of the kind of media exposure that we have. So he doesn't scare me anymore. But I was working security the other year, And one evening I was working in a drugstore, and in the book counter, was this paperback Dr. Sleep, and this is the sequel, right on the cover, the sequel to The Shining. And The Shining, of course, is awesome. But that is actually one of the Stephen King books that I haven't read. I was very happy with the movie. And when I saw the remakes, the non-Stanley Kubrick versions of The Shining that Stephen King was more interested in, I think I prefer the Stanley Kubrick. So I might have made a mistake picking up this book, but if you are a Stephen King fan and you have read The Shining, maybe you like this. I don't know how it compares because I didn't read The Shining. I just saw the movie a gazillion times. Enough that, and it was enough of an influence in my life that I was interested in picking up this book and reading it immediately when I saw it on the shelf, But I had to take 2 passes to get through this book. I'll tell you that. On the first pass, I got not far in, maybe 100 pages if I was lucky. How long is these books are notoriously long, but I think he's in the range of 400 pages for this book. No, 600. I wasn't through the first 100 when I had to stop because they'd gone too deep into what I consider to be like vampire territory. There were some basically like preternatural carny community that rolls in as a main feature in this book, as a main nemesis of Danny, the boy from The Shining. And this is really the story about Danny, his, how he's come after what happened, psychologically, what's become of him. It flows in the same way as most of Stephen King's books in terms of that regard, how someone ages, especially the protagonist. He's an addict. He's got, major alcoholism going on, that kind of thing. But yet he's still got The Shining going on, his gift, and he tunes in to communications with, at one point, with a he finds himself ultimately he finds his place. I shouldn't go through the whole plot. I shouldn't. I'm tempted to. But the kind of the Stanley Kubrick version of what The Shining is, that gift, and that's probably in the original book too. That gift, it's still really represented throughout this book. So that's the appeal. The non-appeal, the thing that I really don't like about this book is that kind of preternatural, carny community that he draws up. That they're like a group that's led by this head woman, and the way that he describes her in this book, what it reminds me, what the image that I get in my head every time he describes her in this book is what I associate it with, is that girl from Four Non-Blondes singing, hey, what's going on? Whatever that fucking song is. Yeah, the top hat carny character is not a scary character in my mind, but he tries to make her the scary character in her little carny community, the scary group, because of their gifts, their skills, which are very vampirish. They're gonna live forever as long as they can feed on people that have the shining. So they sap their shining from them. They come and they kill them, and they suck it in. You know, they breathe it in. So it's a story about vampire shining hunters. And Danny getting involved in the life of a little girl who's being hunted by some of these vampire shining hunters because she herself interceded in one of their kills psychically. That's what it is. That's what the sequel to The Shining is. I'm sorry, folks. Sorry to reveal. I'm sure they're gonna make a movie about it. You might as well read it. See what you think for yourselves. We're gonna be to the box here at Ridgewood very quick. Put it in there and check out what they have in their box. Okay, here we are along Sherwood Boulevard, where I have encountered several people probably near or past retirement age taking walks. Probably some of them are going to pass me as I'm trying to make this video. Anyway, here is their free little library. Take a book, bring a book. They got this little stack of books here. Very nice. Whoever's the host of this. And open it up. They got books too deep in here. Looks like the back layer is mostly, there's some paperbacks and stuff. Nothing so far that I'm seeing that's too interesting. This one's kind of neat. The Leonard Shatner book. Oh, sorry. Yeah, they might as well call it the Leonard Shatner book. This is the Leonard Nimoy book written by William Shatner. 50-year friendship. The remarkable man. That's cool. That's cool. This is another one that I'm very tempted. Very tempted. But I'm going to leave it. William Shatner, by the way, is a Canadian. What else we got in here? We've got Date with a Devil. Better the devil you know. The Last 13. Or the last 13. Are you one of them? What is this? I destroyed all those who might help you. You're on your own now. Still heartbroken by the loss of his mentor, Sam discovers the next dreamer is someone very close to him. Together they must travel to the other side of the world to find the 11th gear. Yeah. Okay. For those guys, I don't even know what you call them, that genre. Steampunk or something, because it's got gears. Under the Cajun Moon. What's this? Author of Whispers of the Bayou. So this is probably a New Orleans book. New Orleans may be the Big Easy, but nothing about it was ever for international business etiquette. Never easy for international business etiquette expert Chloe Ledette. French Quarter murder mystery, it looks like. Alright, so we'll leave that there. And we will add Stephen King's Dr. Sleep, folks. If you're interested, here it is, Ridgewood. Come and get it. These people must not want anybody looking into their backyard. I don't know why we do that, Canadians. I mean, like I did back there with that Bill Shatner book. Like, why did I have to say, you know, William Shatner is Canadian? Like, I should have said he's a proud Canadian. Wave a little flag. It's weird. It's nationalistic. I don't even generally associate myself with nationalistic rhetoric or anything like that, but anytime somebody's in the media that's Canadian, you know, and we see them there, for some reason we want to point them out, you know. Oh, there's Jim Carrey. You know, Jim Carrey's Canadian. Yeah, it's strange. I gotta catch myself when that stuff's happening and make a little autocorrect for the future. Heading over to the Heritage Heights, which is where I live. Probably gonna stop off at my house, drop the backpack, just carry the book, drop the heavy Jedi robes, and maybe use the washroom quick before I go to the next box. All right, back on home turf now in my neighborhood, Heritage Heights, giving my feet a little bit of cold exposure, just walking the snowy perimeter of our park. You know, if and when I feel I need to retreat, I got this sun exposed grass here where there's no snow that I can do that with. But I think exposure to cold is important. I've been experimenting with it over the years, and I think it's helpful ultimately. I was doing better in previous winters, you know, when I'd go take a dip in the river every lunar cycle, stuff like that. I've kind of become a wuss. But I'll tell you what, man, see if you can walk in the snow like I can. I bet you can't. Any case, while I'm getting my cold exposure on, we're going to talk about book number 3 because the book box is just out this way. The third book, the one that I said was kind of more intimate in ways with myself and my life, is Tom Robbins, Another Roadside Attraction. Now, this was a book that, this particular specimen of this book, I think I'll walk some of the semi-dry stuff back the other direction and then take another swipe at the snowy stuff. Feet are definitely feeling the cold, but I don't think even most people can walk that with their bare feet, to tell you the truth, without a lot of panic and stuff. I'm pretty fine with it, and I'm going through just the semi-dry. This is warming me up. That's helpful right there. Anyway, this particular specimen of the book, Mahoney picked up for me at the little Lethbridge library box that's in front of the actual University of Lethbridge library. So there's even a little box right there hosted by the university where you can take a book, leave a book. And she saw this and she knew that Tom Robbins is an author who's, I don't know, I mean, in terms of all-time life influence authors for myself, Tom Robbins is pretty high up there. I've read more Tom Robbins than Stephen King. And for those of you who don't know Tom Robbins, I guess the best way I can describe the books of his that I've read, which are most of the books through probably the first half of his career, probably all the books through the first half of his career, and maybe some into the latter half. But I gave up on him, and I gave up on most reading a couple decades ago. So how would I describe his genre? It's in the fiction section. But I think if you wanted to accurately describe it, you'd say that it's psychedelic fiction. Mahoney picked this up and I was excited because I haven't read a Tom Robbins novel in a long time, and I've read Another Roadside Attraction, several times. Well, I shouldn't say several, but at least twice, maybe 3 times I've read this novel in the past. And a lot of that memory is gone of what was in the actual details of the novel. So when Mahoney picked it up for me, I was very excited. I was like, cool. I haven't read a Tom Robbins book in a long time. Let's do this. Started turning the pages, and I realized, you know, sometimes when things are past, you should leave them past. It reminded me of the time that Mahoney and I and Justine were living in Oregon at my parents' place. This was late 1990s, and we had just married, and we went to the public library, I think, and we're looking at videos, trying to find something that Justine would like. Justine, our daughter, was just 4 years old at the time, and we saw H.R. Puffin stuff. And Mahoney didn't know what H.R. Puffin stuff was, but I grew up, you know, in the 1970s and, you know, into the 80s. But I remember that all the Sid and Marty Krofft shows, right? And so I was like, H.R. Puffin stuff, let's introduce her to that. That stuff is pretty trippy, Tom Robbins-y. That's what I grew up on, was psychedelic stuff. And so pulled that out, checked it out, brought it home, plugged it in, watched it, VHS, and Justine loved it, absolutely loved it. And Mahoney and I were watching it, and we were like, this is like I don't want to say garbage, it's too cliche. It's not garbage, but it's very indulgent. Hey, it's very indulgent, and it's representative of a certain state of mind. And as I started turning the pages of another roadside attraction, for maybe the 4th time in my life, I recognized that indulgence. I wasn't interested in reading that. And so I left it. But that's not to say that I have I've got really a negative opinion of this book. I don't. Tom Robbins was introduced to me by Gary Miller, who was my mentor, one of my mentors when I was in high school. He was a science teacher, took me under his wing, even though I was basically like a D-level student because of my refusal to participate in most of the classes that they were forcing me to take. not for my intellect, but just, you know, you're in a little concentration camp, and they're making you tune into these subjects and you know, the things that they want you to learn. And I wasn't interested in doing most of that, but some of the things in science I was interested in. And when I was a freshman, just coming in the door, I figured this out because I heard that in the announcements at the end of the day at the high school that there was a science club, and they were going to have a meeting, and come to the science club meeting and bring a homemade bottle rocket. And I was like, all right, this is okay. So I went home, and in my garage, you know, my dad had raw ingredients for crazy stuff like gunpowder. We can talk about that some other day. Sure, my dad might be even watching this video, but like I mixed sulfur with saltpeter and charcoal, carbon, and tried to create a nice little gunpowder. I modeled my own tube and kind of glued it to a stick, and I basically made a firework. I made a firework with the raw ingredients from scratch, and brought this to my high school. And when I went to go see Gary Miller, who was the science teacher who was in charge of the science club, and I said, here's my bottle rocket. Luckily I didn't come straight to the meeting. I got there a little bit beforehand, and I was like excited to show him this thing that I made. So here's my bottle rocket. He's like, oh, put that away. You know? Because I had brought an explosive into school, thinking that that's what it was about, and a homemade munition. And really what they were looking for was like a 2-liter bottle of pop with some plastic fins that you glued onto it that they could pressure up with water and air to shoot up little funnel cone nose, you know. They weren't looking for an explosive. So, but that brought my way into friendship with Gary Miller. Gary Miller took me under his wing, got me into some tag programs for, you know, the talented and gifted programs, Odyssey of the Mind, and I had fun with those things while I was in high school, getting D's and everything else. And then when I left high school, Gary Miller gave me a parting gift. I was headed for the Army 4 days after high school, and he gave me a parting gift that was a copy of Tom Robbins' Still Life with Woodpecker. And that opened the door because I brought that to boot camp with me, and I stashed it. I snuck it in with me, and I spent many hours avoiding cleaning details, hiding in a closet, reading Still Life with Woodpecker in basic training in the military. And, you know, it probably corrupted my mind. And that was my entry into Tom Robbins' world. I'm not going to go through the plot of this. You should just read it if you're interested, but it's a psychedelic book. And it's a gateway book into the mind of adolescent psychedelic experience, I should say. It's for young people. It's not for old people. It might be for some old people, I don't know, but it's not for me anymore. I already went through that. I already exercised my way through all of that mentally, both in literature and in the various similar psychedelic experiences I've been exposed to. So not similar, but connected. Anyway, we're gonna put this in the box. It's not far away here. We'll see what else is in there. I may not have any takeaways today. So as you can see, perhaps already, in my neighborhood there's some readers. We got a pretty decent box here, and they're stacked a couple of deep, thanks to some of my neighbors, I'm sure. We'll see what's in here. Tom Clancy type of novel, or this is about I don't know, this is another submarine type of thing. K-19, The Widowmaker, now a major motion picture. I want to see what's in the back sections before I look at what's up front. It looks like mostly paperback, female interest stuff, perhaps. There's another Stephen King novel, I think, Night Crew or something like that. Is that Stephen King? No, that's not. John Sen something. What else we got here? Line of Fire. This would be interesting. Frederick Douglass. Probably something somebody had to read for university here. My Bondage and My Freedom. Penguin Classics. Stories from a Slave. Outspoken abolitionist. Frederick Douglass, born into slavery. Yeah. I haven't read that. If I was younger, I would do so, because it'd be important. But I've went down that road plenty of times already myself in other ways regarding colonization and that whole making of North America, making of our contemporary world thing. Peeking down into the back here again. Sorry if I'm not giving you guys a good perspective, but I'm just looking if there's any books for me, and it's mostly paperbacks again, not and female interest paperbacks. Not for me, you know. Mothers and Daughters. Spirit of Aikido, Yushiba. Now that's some good stuff right there. But went down that road too. Alright, I'm going to introduce my book here. Tom Robbins, another roadside attraction that is not false advertisement, people. Pick it up and enjoy it if you like.